Hi, in this video, we'll learn about potential bias that can be found when analyzing data. We've learned in a previous lesson that programs can be biased based on a lack of data or an imbalance of the amount of data available for certain demographic groups. Even though computers are not human, they are still programmed by humans and are susceptible to bias. Another well-known example is a biased data algorithm that was being used by Amazon as a recruitment tool. They discontinued using it after they discovered a gender bias. The data used in this case was taken from resumes that were submitted to Amazon over a 10-year period. However, most of these resumes were written by males. The algorithm used machine learning and was taught to recognize word patterns in the resumes, rather than looking at skills and experience. Because of this, any word or phrase that was associated with the male gender, like fraternity, or a connection to sports and certain activities, bumped a resume up the line. While any word associated with females, like sorority or the name of a woman's college, penalized the resume. There are many ways that bias can creep into data analysis. If the data set is incomplete, this would cause the analysis to be inconclusive as well. Data sets that lack a diverse representation or context make ways for potential bias, no matter how good the analysis is. If the data is incomplete or bad, then the analysis is incomplete or bad. The data in a dataset can also be used incorrectly, like in the recruitment algorithm. The choice to use and analyze word phrases instead of skills and experience was a main part in the gender bias that followed. In short, it's important to know that the data that is missing may tell as important as a story as the data that is there. We've learned about a lot of ways bias can show up in the different stages of the data life science cycle. There can be bias in the way a statistical question can be asked. We've learned about confirmation bias, or just finding data that supports your own beliefs about the study. There can also be a lack of representation in the data that is collected. We learned also that data scientists make a lot of decisions during the data cleaning step of data collection. Every one of the decisions opens a door for potential bias. Decisions that are made about what to do with missing data or outliers should not be done in isolation and should be well documented. Another bias to consider is interpretation bias. This is similar to the bias found when posing a statistical question and can show up during the interpretation stage of the data science lifecycle. There's a famous study regarding interpretation bias. Elizabeth Loftus, a cognitive psychologist, carried out research where she showed a film of car crashes to participants. Then she split them into groups and separately asked them several questions about the car crashes. The questions were the same except for a simple change in the verbs used for each group. For example, one of the questions asked was about how fast were the cars going when they bumped, and the other group was asked about how fast were the cars going when they smashed. To her surprise, the choice of verb had a huge impact on their estimates. Those who were told they smashed guessed higher speeds, as compared to those who were told they bumped. This is important to remember when you're interpreting or presenting data. You'll want to be aware of what words you're using. A rule of thumb for avoiding bias is to make sure that you don't work in isolation as much as possible. Work with others when you can during all phases of the data science lifecycle. Check for and use multiple data sources to compare and verify instead of just referencing one data set. And reach out to others to review your results. All of these strategies will help limit bias from creeping into your study. All right, well now it's your turn to dive deeper and explore more about these concepts.